Hi, welcome to the reflection of memory, where we interrogate the Nigerian gory past. I remain your host, Osho Abiodun. Today we are looking at the work of one of the Nigerian foremost writer, Chinua Achebe. The book we are considering in this episode is There Was a Country. There is an old Igbo proverb that tells us a man who does not know where the rain began to beat him cannot say where he dried his body. For Chinua Achebe, writing his final major work, There Was a Country, was a way of looking back at that storm. He believed that to understand the tragedy of the Nigeria Biafra War, you have to go back to the very beginning, not just to his own birth, but to the moment European powers sat around the table in Berlin in 1885 and carved up Africa like a piece of chocolate cake. They created a delicate, some say artificial, lattice called Nigeria, bringing together over 250 ethnic groups who had been ruling themselves for centuries. Achebe was born into this mix on November 16, 1930, in a town called Ogidi. He often said he grew up at a cultural crossroads. It was a place of dangerous potency where two worlds collided: the Christian world of his father Isaiah, a pious teacher, and the traditional Igbo world of his great uncle Udo Oseyi. While his father was busy spreading the gospel, Achebe would sneak off to visit hidden relatives who seemed perfectly content in their ancient ways. This tension wasn't just a local family matter. It's a struggle seen in the work of writers like James Baldwin, Toni Morrison, and Albert Camus, who all wrestle with the conundrum of the outsider and the weight of competing identities. From his mother and sister, Achebe learned the art of Igbo oral storytelling, filled with the mischievous adventure of the tortoise, Mbe. But his formal education was strictly British. He was part of what he called the Lucky Generation, the first group of Nigerians groomed by the colonial system to eventually take over the country. He attended the Government College Umuahia, which was known as the Eton of the East, a meritocratic school that produced an incredible list of African thinkers. It was Umuahia that he met his lifelong friend, the legendary poet Christopher Okigbo, whom Achebe described as an extraordinary person and a meteor that simply couldn't be suppressed. They were surrounded by brilliance, people like Kenneth Kadike, who would become the first indigenous head of Nigeria's premier university, and later lamented that intellectuals were the first peddlers of tribalism. At the time, however, they were just young men standing at the dawn of a new era. When Achebe went to University College Ibadan, he made a choice that changed the world. He gave up a medical scholarship to study English, history, and theology. He felt a moral obligation to write because the books he was reading, from Shakespeare to Dickens, didn't represent his people, or if they did, the depictions were antagonistic. He was part of a movement of writing back to the West, joined later by voices like Ngugi Tiongo and Wole Soyinka, who sought to reclaim the African narrative from colonial myths. We end this part of the story on October 1st, 1960, Nigeria's Independence Day. The air was electric, like the relief of rain after a scorching dry season. Figures like Nnamdi Azikiwe, the father of African independence, had built a vision of a unified nation. Achebe and his peers moved into the homes and jobs left by the British, feeling like they had inherited freedom on a platter of gold. But there was a shadow over the celebration. Achebe notes with hindsight that popular faith in democracy was compromised from its birth. The British had managed their exit with precision, but they had also worked behind the scenes to ensure that their own interests would be protected after they left. The lucky generation didn't realize it yet, but the rain that had been beating them for centuries was about to turn into a flood. Do join me in the next episode as we continue to explore There Was a Country by Chinua Achebe. I remain your host, Osho Abiodun.